everyone, and welcome back. Today I'm going to be going over all of the books that I read in May. I read 6 books and DNFed 1, my first ever full DNF, so it was definitely an interesting reading month. I also had like 2 or 3 5-stars. As far as the TBR goes, I didn't set one. I was mood reading for this month, but I'm pretty happy with how my reading month went. But let's get started with the first book, which is The Second Death of Locke by V.L. Bovalino. And this is the first book in the Hand and the Heart series. And I gave this one 4.5 stars. From what I understand of this series, there's only the first book out so far. I think the second book is coming out soon. And these are all like interconnected romantasy standalones that are set in the same world, but with different characters. And in this first book, we follow Gray, who is a knight and is also a well. And a well's job is to supply power to their mage and also to protect them in battle and just in general. And Gray is Kyr's well, and Kyr also happens to be her childhood best friend. And they are sent on a quest to protect a child from an enemy kingdom, which puts them in the dangerous heart of the war. Gray and Kyr must decide what risks they're willing to take because they are hiding a huge secret. I really like this magic system. We have the mages that draw the power from their wells, and each mage has an affinity and a specialty. So for example, a mage who has a flesh and bone affinity may have a bone specialty, and then they can only affect the bones of their targets. And the wells are immune to magic. So the mages also have to learn to fight physically because they can't take out the wells with their magic. It also does mention that magic works differently in other places in the world, so I'm hoping we get to see some of that in these other books. But as far as our characters go, there was really great tension and longing. The characters had really great chemistry. They had a really great long-standing friendship. I loved the main characters, both Gray and Kyr. I also thought the pacing was really great in this one. I was never bored. There was something kind of odd going on in the writing where the words "it's just" were repeatedly said in places where it just really didn't make any sense. Once it happened like multiple times on one page, and it was always that phrase, so I'm assuming it was just a mistake that was missed. And it's not a big deal, but it's something that I did notice, so I thought I would mention it. And when I looked at the synopsis for the second book, it looks like we're following characters who are in the same world, but seem to be unrelated to the original stories and the original characters, which I'm kind of sad about because I kind of wanted to see more of Gray and Kyr and of their side characters. I kind of thought the next books would follow the side characters, but I'm still excited. I'm still going to continue in this series. From what I've seen of the second book, it's going to be like second chance. They're divorced. We don't know why. There's some big secrets. I think it could be really interesting, so I will definitely be picking up the second book when it comes out. Book number 2 is The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett, and this is the first book in the Shadow of the Leviathan series. And this one was a 5-star, probably going to be in my top reads of the year. But a little bit about this book. This is a murder mystery set in a fantasy world, and we follow Din, who is an assistant investigator to Anna. And Anna has a few quirks, which include never wanting to leave her house and always wearing a blindfold. So obviously this causes some issues as far as investigating goes. So Din acts as her eyes and ears, and he goes to crime scenes for her. Din is able to perfectly relay the information to Anna because he has been permanently altered to be an engraver, which means that he has a perfect memory. And they're assigned a case where a tree has spontaneously grown out of a high imperial officer. Once they start investigating, it becomes clear that it goes way beyond just this one officer. And they're also dealing with the threat of the Leviathans. The Leviathans show up every wet season, and they try to break through the walls that have been put up to keep them out and to keep everyone safe. And this one had me immediately intrigued. We start out right away at the investigation, and we get to see Din working and how all of that works. I love the characters, especially Anna. She's fun and witty, and she's a bit pretentious, but I found her funny. And Din is like super serious. They work really well together, and I thought their dynamic together was really fun. And the fantasy part of this was also really interesting. We have these Leviathans. I love monsters in my fantasy books. And then we have these alterations, and there's 2 types of alterations. There's grafts and suffusions. And suffusions cause a permanent change like Din's memory engraving. And grafts cause a temporary growth in like speed or strength, things like that. And these are not just applied to humans, they're used throughout the world on plants, animals. I also thought that how these are made and distributed was interesting, but I don't want to get you into that. I don't want to spoil it. I also thought the pacing on this was really good. We were being fed like little bits of info at a good pace that kept it from being boring, but still left a lot to be speculated on. There was also a good cast of side characters I liked, but I think the side characters change in every book. I know the mystery changes in each book. So this mystery does wrap up in this first book. So you could read this and not feel rushed to continue the series if that's something you're worried about. But I definitely want to continue it soon because this, like I said, was one of my favorite reads of the year so far. Next up is Rights of the Starling by Devney Perry, and this is the second book in the Shield of Sparrow series, and this one was also a 5-star, another probable favorite of mine. And this is a romantasy trilogy with monsters, found family, and lots of crazy twists. And in book 1, Shield of Sparrows, we follow Odessa, who is a princess. Odessa's sister has been chosen as the sparrow. She's been training her whole life. And the sparrow is a princess who is married to another kingdom to fulfill the Shield of Sparrows treaty and keep the peace between all of the kingdoms. But when the prince arrives, he wants to marry Odessa instead. So she has to quickly adapt and learn everything, and she learns that being the sparrow comes with a lot more risk and responsibility than she had realized. They're also dealing with the incoming Crux migration. The Crux are giant birds that attack anything they fly over as they migrate, so this has historically been a very deadly event. And this second book picks up pretty much right where we left off. We got a new character and her POV, which I personally really liked, but I know a lot of people didn't like having this new character have such a big chunk of the book. We also got more world building in this one. We had a lot of traveling through new areas of the world. But I will say, if you don't like travel stories, this one probably isn't for you. The first book had a lot of travel. I think this one probably has even more. We saw more of the Voster, which are priests with magical abilities, and I was really wanting to learn more about them and their magic, and we did get that. I was really happy about that. We also saw more of these monsters, which is one of my favorite parts of this series. They add great tension on top of the plot we already have going. I also felt like the fantasy was more forward in this one, which I really liked. I also love seeing more of the characters that I missed, like Evie and FaZe. Book 2 just really took my love for this series to a whole new level, and I cannot wait for book 3. Unless book 3 really takes a bad turn, I think this could go into my favorite series of all time. Book number 4 is Saving Six by Chloe Walsh, and this is the third book in the Boys of Tommen series. And I gave this one 4.5 stars. And this is, I guess, a contemporary sports romance following a group of Irish teens in the early 2000s. But to me, I don't really think of it as a contemporary romance, and I don't really have anything else that I've personally read that I can compare it to. So it just kind of is on its own for me. But these are interconnected duologies, and then we have one standalone. And each duology and the standalone follows a different couple. The first duology follows Johnny and Shannon, and then the second duology follows Joey, who is Shannon's older brother, and Aoife. And this series does get really dark, so check your trigger warnings for this one. All of our characters struggle with different issues. Like, for example, Shannon and her brother Joey struggle with having a really bad home life. Joey also struggles with addiction. We see a lot of that in his books. And those are just a couple of examples, so like I said, check your warnings. In book 1, Binding 13, we follow Johnny and Shannon has been dealing with really vicious bullying at her school, so her mom sends her to Tommen, which is like a prestigious private school, and she's hoping that this will give Shannon a fresh start. And at Tommen, Shannon meets Johnny and his group of friends, and she's also reunited with a few friends of her own. And we see her journey at this new school, dealing with everything at home. And we also see Johnny, who is a rugby star, and his journey through an injury and everything that comes with all of that. And these stories are both heartbreaking and beautiful. I loved the first duology. I really loved Johnny and Shannon. I also really loved this duology. I have read both. I will talk a little bit more about Redeeming Six later in the video. But in this book, we really see how much Joey actually sacrifices for his family. We saw it in the first 2 books, but it is so much more than it originally seems when we're seeing it from his POV and from Aoife's POV. We also see how much Aoife really stands by him through thick and thin. I did miss the friend group from the first 2 books because Joey and Aoife go to a different school. They have their own friend group who I also really liked, but I did miss the original group a bit. But we do get to see glimpses of them, so that was fun. This book starts when Joey and Aoife are 12 and then ends when Binding 13 is kind of starting. And I liked that. I liked going back and seeing how their friendship developed. We saw them a bit in the first 2 books, and I liked being able to see their start. And I really have a hard time deciding which duology I like more. I rated all 4 books really similarly. I will definitely be continuing hopefully soon. And up next, on a not so good note, we have Garnet Flats by Devney Perry. and this is the third book in the Eden's series. And this one was my first ever full DNF, which is kind of surprising. Obviously, I like Devney Perry. I just rated one of her books 5 stars. The Eden series hasn't worked the best for me. The first book was like 3.5. The second book I did give 4 stars. I really liked it. This one I really don't like. But these are romantic, suspense, interconnected standalones following the Eden siblings. Each book follows a different sibling. Book 3 follows Talia Eden, who's a doctor, and Foster Madden, who is a UFC fighter. And this is a second chance romance, and the reason for the second chance, which is all in the synopsis, this is not spoilers, is that he left her for her best friend, he married her best friend, has now divorced the best friend, and is back 7 years later hoping that Talia will want to get back together. So immediately I really didn't have a good feeling about this one. I'm not super surprised that I didn't like it, but I wanted to give it a chance. But I hated him immediately. He's actually worse than I had anticipated. He really acts like she owes him something and throws a fit when she doesn't want to talk to him. He's really arrogant and really entitled. I was really hoping that some crazy twist would happen and he would end up just leaving. I really liked Talia, and the idea of her ending up with him just kind of bothered me. I felt like she deserved better than that. I will say I was intrigued by whatever was going on with the ex because it made no sense. And it's clear there's some crazy story there that he hasn't told us yet about why he did what he did, but I don't think it would have made a difference to me. I don't think it would have made me like him. It was entertaining though. I thought the writing was pretty good, and I did kind of spoil it for myself when I was trying to decide whether to DNF. I went and looked at some of the reviews on Goodreads, and from what I saw, I think it was just going to go downhill even further, so I just decided to DNF it. In the future, I may just skip this one and continue on in the series if I'm looking for some quick, easy palate cleansers. But for right now, I'm going to DNF this series. But I will say I was intrigued. It was entertaining. I thought the writing was good. So if you don't think this would bother you, maybe you would like this. It just really was not for me. Next up is Lady of Shadows by Melissa K. Rorick, and this is the second book in the Lady of Darkness series. And I gave this one 3.5 stars. This is a finished romantasy series with fae, vampires, witches, and shifters, and elemental magic. And in the first book, Lady of Darkness, we follow Scarlet, who is an assassin. And Scarlet has been sent to live in a noble family's house, kind of as punishment after a tragedy occurs. Scarlet is offered a job where payment will be revenge on the Fae Fire Prince, who took out her mother 10 years earlier. But children from the area she grew up in start to disappear. So she puts this job on hold to try to help figure out what's been happening to them. And this second book picks back up right where we left off. There was a big conflict that arose at the end of book 1, and it did feel really quickly resolved in this second book, which did bother me a bit. There's also a love triangle that I don't really like. It's the type of love triangle where it's super obvious from the very beginning of book 1 what's going to happen, but for some reason it is drug out until book 2. It just feels like a waste of time to me. I'm not a fan. I also don't love the main characters in general. Scarlet is pretty whiny and Soren is kind of mean. I do really like the found family in this. I really like some of the side characters like Eliza and Cyrus. I also liked the plot for this one. We find out a lot in book 1 and things end up changing quite a bit in this book. Overall, this series, and honestly especially the second book, has reminded me a lot of ACOTAR. This second book reminds me a lot of the second ACOTAR book, A Court of Mist and Fury, with maybe a little bit of like Throne of Glass sprinkled in. It has similar characters, it has similar events, it has similar relationship progression. The plot does feel different from ACOTAR, but this is a more character-driven, romance-forward story, so it does feel really similar to me, and I definitely don't like it as much as ACOTAR or Throne of Glass. But if you like those series, you will probably like this. And if you don't like those series, you probably won't like it. We get some new world building for the place that we end up in book 2, which I did like. The ending was crazy. I still think these books will continue to get better as I go, so I'm gonna keep reading them, even though they've been kind of average. But I'm having a good time with them. I'm enjoying them. I'm not saying I don't like it, and I will be continuing. Okay, so now we have Redeeming 6 by Chloe Walsh, and this is the 4th book in the Boys of Tommen series. And I also gave this one 4.5 stars. And this is Joey and Aoife's second book. I don't have a ton to say because I already said a lot of it when I talked about Saving 6, but some things I did really like. I liked that we saw more of the original characters in this second book, and we get to see Joey and Aoife kind of starting to become a part of that original group. There's also what I think is some foreshadowing for the future books, and that has me wanting to continue. And this book takes place during Binding and Keeping 13, so we see some of the major events from those books from Joey and Aoife's POV, and they were just as hard to read the second time around. If you've read those two books, you'll know what I'm talking about. But overall, like I said earlier, I love Joey and Aoife. I love the found family in this story. These stories will have you all over the place. You'll feel heartbroken, then you'll feel hopeful, and then repeat. I really enjoy this series, and I'm hoping to get to Taming 7 soon. I'm really excited for that one and for the characters that we're going to be following. There's some of my favorite characters in this series. But overall, it was a pretty good reading month. I had a couple 5 stars, I had a few 4.5s, 1 DNF, but I'm pretty happy with it. But let me know in the comments down below, what did you read in the month of May? Have you read any of the books that I mentioned? What did you think of them? I will leave my Bookstagram and my Goodreads in the description down below. I would really appreciate it if you check them out. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And I hope to see you all in the next one.